Hi all, this is Jeanette Keynes from Jewelry Arts Inc. This video is part one of how to make a hollow bead using my amazing new die formers from my Queen Puabi collection. They're available on my website right now on jewelryartstools.com. In case you've all been completely off the internet for like the last couple years, I've been working on this die project that I've been foaming at the mouth with excitement about it. Essentially, it's recreating the methods that the ancient used to make hollow beads, which, you know, a lot of people have been like, oh, do I need a hydraulic press? Like, no. You're gonna use a little hammer and we're gonna anneal and that's it. Because guess what? Did the Etruscans have a hydraulic press? No, they didn't. And if you don't know what we say around the studio all the time, if it's good enough for the Etruscans, it is good enough for us. So what I'm gonna do with this is I'm just gonna take you through, explain the steps of how to do it. They're actually quite easy. I've done most of the hard work already, so yay me. And so Alexis and I are gonna work on this together. And the one that we're gonna do is this one right here. I'll have Alexis do a close-up. This is from the Queen Puabi collection. There's two sizes. We'll do the big one just because it's a little easier to see and to film. But the process is exactly the same for a bead this size and a bead this size. Now, I made these out of 30 gauge sheet, which is relatively thin. Most hollow form stuff like that is pretty thin. You can make it thicker in like 26 gauge. And I did some experiments and I did some in 26 gauge. And what I really found was it just was heavier. Do you know what I mean? Like there really was no benefit. Again, if it was good enough for the Etruscans, it's good enough for us. So we're using 30 gauge sheet. Okay. So this is what the dies look like. There's, you know, all different shapes and sizes, but essentially you have a positive of the shape like so. Okay, with a little convenient bar there for hammering. And here's the negative. And essentially I designed these that they fit together, but with enough space in there for the bead to be formed. Do you know what I mean? They can't fit together too tightly or you can't make the bead. And as we learned through many, many months of testing, if it's a little too tight in there, the bead actually gets stuck. So don't worry, that won't happen to you. That's why when you put these together, there's like wiggle room. You know what I mean? They don't fit together super tight. That's room for the metal to be in there and enough wiggle room that that little stinker will slide right out instead of getting stuck in there. So we're gonna use just some 30 gauge fine silver sheet. You know, fine silver is beautiful and soft and super cooperative. If you're just like fooling around with these and you wanna like start with just some copper sheet, you know, just to like do a fast and dirty version and see how it feels, you can. But a lot of times we just do our tests in fine silver because fine silver is like so cooperative. Okay, now here's the thing. Depending on how deep this die is, right? Like this one is deepish. There's going to be a lot of different ones, and I'll do a little show. I'll show a few together just to show you. But the point is, you usually just cut your sheet a little bit bigger than the top surface of the die, because as you put that sheet there, it's going to, you know what I mean, kind of get sucked in. So in other words, if you cut your sheet like super tight right here, it may scooch over to the side and you may not have enough metal. So you kind of are always starting with more metal than you think you need, and that'll actually be the perfect amount. So what I'll do is I'll show you what I mean with this. And I don't even most of the time do it with my dividers. I just lay it on top of here and kind of go, oh, okay, give myself a little extra, a little extra. You see what I'm saying? Just like that. I'm just gonna use my Joyce Chens, I'm gonna cut it, and then I'm gonna anneal it. And actually, I'll cut a couple of them because in theory, if we're making a bead, we want two sides. But honestly, with the dies, I mean, it depends on what you're gonna use it for, because you can, obviously, they're designed to be made, you know, two halves and to make a hollow bead. But a lot of times for an earring, or something, depending on the piece, you don't need that. You know, a lot of people have been making half of one and then just soldering an ear wire in there, and it's like nice and light and you get the beautiful shape. So you don't have to make two halves if you don't want to. So I'm gonna cut a couple of them out, we'll anneal them, and then we'll come right back. So you see these two little pieces that I cut, and you notice I didn't like measure them. I didn't make sure that the side, I measured roughly. This is not the kind of thing where you're like, I need those sides to be perfectly parallel or anything like that, because it's gonna get trimmed away. So for example, You see what I mean? Like this, how I've cut it with a little extra sticking out, like so. And then I'll show you the other one, which is not exactly the same, but more. You see what I'm saying? It's just, if you have that little bit of extra, you'll have plenty to trim off and you won't have a problem. The only time you have a problem is when you try to outsmart yourself and go like, I'm gonna cut it like right, like just use the minimal amount. And then you'll see it'll kind of scooch to the side, and it always scooches to the wrong side, and then you don't have enough. So let me show you. Honestly, a lot of times I use a leather mallet for this just because it keeps you from like getting too like, ah! You know what I mean? And going really crazy. Because the whole thing with these, honestly, is they're easy to do, but just like relax. This is not the kind of thing where you're gonna be, you know what I mean, like going berserker. You're gonna be like, tap, 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 a kneel, tap, 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 a kneel. The more that you force it, it usually causes more problems than anything else. So, for example, I'm gonna put my sheet right on there. Now, this is how I hold it, and this is important. In my dominant hand, I'm gonna have my hammer. And here's the thing, like I like the leather mallet, but if you have a small metal hammer, that's fine too. Just don't like get out like something you would use for forging an ingot out, you know, and then be like, I don't know what happened. You know what I mean? So I'm gonna take this in my non-dominant hand, which for me is my left hand. And I'm gonna place it roughly in the center. Now, the great thing about this tool is they're gonna center themselves as we tap in there further. You know, it's gonna register itself. In other words, you really can't go that far off because it's just gonna sink right in there. So what I do, just like what I'm doing, you know that left-handed hammering technique that we use when we're setting, where I hold the tool right here and do this? That's exactly what I'm gonna do. And I usually just kind of slide my fingers down so that I'm holding the bottom of the die and the positive and the sheet. In other words, just like that. You know, you just kind of drop your fingers down, because obviously if you leave your fingers too far up here, you might hit them with the hammer, and you don't want to do that. That's contraindicated. Okay, now watch this action. Ta-da! Okay, what you see there is the beginning of your bead. Now, what this sheet out here is going to want to do, it's going to start wanting to be naughty, and it's going to kind of create waves. So what I have been doing is I whack it a couple times like that, and then I just take my parallel pliers, or you could also take chain nose pliers, it doesn't really matter, and just take it and go squish. You don't have to make the dumb sound effect if you don't want, but I like to. Squish. You see what I mean? It's not about it being perfectly flat, but you're getting out those waves. Because the thing of it is, if you let those waves, you know, just keep going, sooner or later you might get a little pleat at the edge, and good luck getting that little stinker out. So basically it's like tap, tap, do a little bit of squishing to just like that, and then I'm going to anneal. The whole key, like I said, I'm going to keep repeating this. It's just like tap, tap, and anneal. Don't try to like smash it all the way down in there all at once, okay? So you see, these have been annealed, and I also want to point out, like I flattened these out so that there's no like major waves in there, but it's not like I'm worried about the whole thing laying perfectly flat. You just can't let, you know, real waves start to form, because like we were just discussing off camera. If you do that, eventually you'll get a pleat, and that then you cannot recover. Okay, so let me show you again. Oh, and by the way, just so you know, the reason that I'm working on a stack of magazines is because the fire department, thank you fire department, made us put this dumb tile on the top of our benches. So if I were to hammer right on my bench, this would crack. So you don't have to at home work on top of a stack of magazines, but we tend to do that unless we go to a wood surface, because otherwise our beautiful, amazing tile would crack, and then we would sob and everyone would be very upset. So just so you know, you don't have to do it on a stack of magazines. So I'm gonna take this, I'm gonna pop it right on there, just like that. And you see what I mean? It'll really self-register. Like it really doesn't take a lot of effort to like lining everything up perfectly straight. Okay, I'm gonna grab this in my hand, and then you see what I mean? I just slide my fingers down so that they're out of the way. And I usually just whack it 2 or 3 times. That's the main thing I want to emphasize. Just like relax and tap. If you don't try to like force it too much, this is like so easy. So, and then you see, you know, my little waves, right? Just gonna take my pliers and go like so, like so. And then I'm gonna anneal and I'm gonna do it again. And literally this is what we're gonna do. I mean, I'll keep showing you, but ultimately we're just gonna go until this is all the way down in there. You'll know, I'll show you how you'll know, but you'll know you'll get like a little shiny spot on top. Once we get to the point where this is almost all the way down in there, then I'll probably trim this excess metal away. But honestly, for the process, it's just as easy just to leave it there.